Welcome to the Bookmark channel. Today we're looking at one of C.S. Lewis's most famous and cunning works of fiction, the Screwtape letters. Written and published in installments in The Guardian during World War II, Lewis uses the devil's point of view to make us think hard about faith, morality, and eternity. The premise is simple and brilliant. A senior devil named Screwtape writes letters of instruction to his junior tempter, Wormwood, explaining how to win one human soul, called the patient, for hell. What makes these letters terrifying and useful is that they don't describe dramatic acts of evil so much as the slow, ordinary rot. Distractions, pride, busyness, small hypocrisies. Lewis shows how easy it is for a life to drift away from God not through headline sins, but through habits, attitudes, and tiny compromises. Let's walk through the first 10 letters, the early lessons Screwtape gives Wormwood, and see the devil's strategy unspooled. Screwtape's first advice is to keep the patient paying attention to the surface. In a confusing world of competing philosophies and loud opinions, the patient should be content with the modern, practical, and fashionable. If Wormwood can keep him busy with trivia and appearances, he will never pause long enough to ask the deep questions about meaning, God, and eternity. Next, make the patient vague about doctrine and disappointed with the church. If he judges other churchgoers and focuses on petty irritations, he will be disillusioned and drift away. Screwtape points out something sobering. God permits this because he wants willing followers, not puppets. The devil's aim is to twist disappointment into cynicism. Screwtape teams up with another tempter, Glubose, to create double standards between the patient and his mother. The patient prays for an idealized version of his relationships while mistreating the real people close to him. That kind of hypocrisy renders prayer ineffective, superficial, and harmless. Once prayer is hollowed out, Screwtape says, the patient will be self-conscious and theatrical rather than reverent and honest. Make him treat prayer as a feeling or a ritual rather than a real conversation. If success equals the right feeling, then faith becomes dependent on emotion, not obedience. Contrary to what you might expect, Screwtape warns that war is not always a godsend for temptation. War forces people to confront mortality and the eternal, which can drive them toward God. Prosperity and comfort are much more useful for corrupting souls. Still, the devil will try to use fear, hatred, and blame, especially the temptation to hate the enemy or to blame God for the tragedy. While the patient waits to be enlisted, Wormwood must fuel anxiety about the future. Fear itself is natural. The job of hell is to convert fear into chronic worry, self-pity, and bitterness. If the patient lives in imagined disasters instead of trusting God in the present, his faith will wither. Keep demons invisible and absurd. Screwtape advises, make humans treat spiritual realities as nonsense, or else as mystical forces to be manipulated. Twist science and philosophy into false gods so people worship abstractions instead of the Creator. Another effective ploy is to turn faith into a tool for worldly causes, patriotism, politics, or ideology, so belief serves ambition rather than God. Spiritual life waxes and wanes by design. God allows dryness to produce growth. Screwtape urges Wormwood to exploit these low times. If the patient doubts when God is silent, he may abandon perseverance. But this is risky for hell, because faithful endurance can build maturity. When the patient is spiritually low, overindulgence becomes tempting. Food, sex, entertainment, all can be turned into anesthetics that dull the soul. The devil will also whisper that the dryness is permanent, to drive the patient into despair, or that it's trivial, to encourage a lukewarm, moderate Christianity. Both outcomes pull him away from wholehearted devotion. Screwtape highlights the corrosive power of unhealthy relationships. Keep the patient attached to secular friends whose values conflict with Christian teaching. Teach him to live a double life, church on Sunday, an entirely different code the rest of the week. And if the patient notices, call him intolerant. Guilt and confusion will do the rest. Those first 10 letters form an instruction manual for small, effective temptations. keep the soul distracted, make belief vague, hollow out prayer, exploit fear and comfort, and encourage compromise in relationships and loyalties. The pattern is clear. Don't aim for spectacular evil. Aim for subtle corrosion. So what should we, as readers and as people of faith, take away? 3 quick, practical responses. First, be vigilant about the small things. Spiritual decline usually starts in tiny choices. What you give your attention to, how you speak about others, whether your prayer is honest. Second, learn to endure dry seasons. Silence and doubt are not necessarily failure. They can be a workshop for faith. Perseverance often leads to deeper trust. Third, examine your friendships and loyalties. If a passion for politics, comfort, or social approval overshadows love for God, that's a red flag. C.S. Lewis wrote these letters not to scare us for the sake of fear, but to wake us up, to show how the enemy works in ordinary life and to invite us to choose differently. The devil's strategies are clever because they imitate goodness just enough to deceive. The cure is clarity, confession, and a daily turning back to what matters. Thanks for watching Bookmarked. If you enjoyed this summary and want more explorations of classics like the Screwtape letters, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. What passage surprised you the most? See you next time for another book deep dive.